is now 5 p.m., Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. And I call to order the meeting of the Victorville City Council, Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, Victorville Water District, and the City Housing Asset Successor. May we have roll call, please?
So I'm here to provide an update for the Homelessness Solutions Task Force and present to you our plan to create a 150-bed wellness and recuperative care center that will act as a shelter and provide on-site supportive services, medical respite, and housing assistance to stabilize our homeless communities. But before I discuss the details of this plan, I'd like to highlight some current developments. If you are not aware, California now has 53% of our nation's unsheltered homeless population. And there's been a political shift. Cities are now pushed to the forefront to solve its own homeless problems, despite not having adequate resources or the infrastructure in place to do so. To complicate matters further, cities are being sued in federal courts for criminalizing and punishing the homeless. And what this means for our city is that we are unable to enforce anti-camping ordinances and public nuisance laws unless we have adequate shelter beds in place. Multiple city departments are being affected by homelessness, and it's causing an increased strain on city resources and manpower. And just to illustrate, in 2019, city staff exhausted 339 hours in homeless-related cleanup efforts, which included the disposal of 155 tons of trash and solid waste. There were 315 homeless encampment cases that were created. And in regards to mobilizing a response to the encampments, it requires the coordination of code enforcement, law enforcement, and community services. So again, I'm illustrating how our city resources are being impacted. Furthermore, homelessness is having a ripple effect in our communities, and it is negatively impacting the public, our businesses, and the environment. And the reason for this is primarily because people without housing are high consumers of public resources. And as such, they tend to generate an expense to a city rather than income. So if our city is trying to, or if our city does not take the steps to stabilize the homeless community, these negative impacts will continue. But fortunately, City Council, in its commitment to reduce homelessness, took a proactive step and approved the creation of the Homelessness Solutions Task Force, and that was formed in February 2019. You can see from the list that the task force is made up of 12 stakeholders representing different segments of the community. Also, please take note that we do have a representation for the homeless community. And then City Council took another proactive step and approved the hiring of its first Homelessness Solutions Coordinator, and that would be me. And through a collaborative effort, the task force and myself, we developed a strategic action plan, which was also approved by City Council on November 5th, 2019. So, the first priority in our strategic action plan is the creation of an enhanced shelter operation, which we are referring to as the Wellness and Recuperative Care Center. This collaborative project will be ran or managed by contracted lead operators, and it will consist of two distinct components that will provide the services that I mentioned before regarding enhanced shelter and medical respite. The first component is the Wellness Center, and it will provide 100 shelter beds and support services to homeless men, women, and families. And the second component is our Recuperative Care Center, and it will provide 50 medical respite beds. I want you to take note to some of the amenities in this Wellness Center. It's different than any typical shelter. We will have the separate sleeping areas for the men, women, and families, so people can stay together, couples can stay together, families can stay together. The basic needs will be met, which includes the meals and the ability to shower, the ability to have a mailbox so that you can receive important documentations. People will be assigned a case manager so they can have an individualized service plan to help with stabilization. And this will include assistance with documentation readiness, income stabilization, and housing navigation. There will be a variety of support services on site to include workforce training, job readiness skills, life skills, recovery classes. There will be space for pet kennels, so if a homeless person had an animal or a pet, they can bring it to the wellness center. There will be space for storage lockers and bins so that people can safely secure their items. And then another neat component is that our wellness center will be similar to a day center so that individuals can rest and they can recover and they can work on their individualized case plan rather than being forced out in the community like typical shelters. And in such, this will reduce the foot traffic and visibility of homeless persons in our communities and business districts. Looking at this wellness center a little bit further, you can see from the flow chart how a person would enter homeless. They would receive access to on-site services that I just mentioned, and they will exit stabilized. But what I really want you to understand is that this component is going to utilize a multi-agency collaboration that will consist of nonprofits and government agencies. So, for example, if a person came to the wellness center, the case manager will be able to assess and may determine that this person shows signs of a mild or moderate mental health disorder. And then they can connect this individual to a representative from the Department of Behavioral Health who is on site. In the same sense, if an individual came to the wellness center and they, let's say, had income because they worked at Walmart or McDonald's or whatever, but they simply cannot afford housing on their own, so therefore they are homeless, they're sleeping in their cars, then that case manager can connect them to an on-site housing agency, and they can have assistance with rapid rehousing, transitional housing, or permanent supportive housing. So basically, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just working more collaboratively with programs that already exist under one roof in a one-stop shop model. The second component is recuperative care, which is medical respite, and this is something that will be heavily utilized by the 3 local hospitals. Respite care, for the most part, is going to be a benefit financially to the hospitals, but it's also going to be a benefit to a person who's able to be discharged to the recuperative care center. And the reason is because hospitals are not able to discharge a homeless person who still requires some type of recovery or care to a typical shelter. You just can't do it. But the hospital can discharge an individual to a recuperative care center. And the benefit is that while this person is recovering from their illness or injury, they will have access to the same on-site services that I just mentioned in the wellness center. At the bottom of the screen, you see where it says a 7-day stay in the hospital is equal to 1 year's rent. It's a sad statement, but it's true. So I want to break this down for you. For a typical 7-day stay in the hospital, it will cost anywhere between $16,000 to $21,000 for a 1-week stay. But if that hospital were to discharge an individual to a recuperative care center, the cost ranges between $1,400 and $1,800. I'm rounding up for 1 week. So that's a considerable savings to the hospital. But the other benefit to the hospitals would be that you will not have homeless individuals dealing with cycling in and out of the hospitals. They will lower the recidivism rate. And it will also allow hospitals to improve their ER wait times. It will allow hospitals to increase their bed availability. And it will allow the recuperative care patient to receive the help that they need to stabilize. Now, I've focused on 2 components already, and that's the shelter component and the medical respite. But the third component that we're looking at is community benefit. We are right now talking to healthcare agencies that want to provide on-site medical services at the Wellness and Recuperative Care facility. These services would be free to the occupants of the Wellness and Recuperative Care Center, and it would cover medical, it would cover pharmaceutical, and it would cover dental. The benefit to the community is that those same services will be available to community members as well. These services will be completely free to the occupants of the Wellness and Recuperative Care Center, and it would be a nominal cost, like $3 to $5 per visit for community members. And if they did not have the fee, no one will be turned away. This model is ideal for people who do not have health care insurance, and it's also excellent for people who have chronic conditions and they have difficulty with their medical share of cost. The second component that will be beneficial to the community is the homeless prevention services. If you live in the community, and let's say you find yourself at risk of being homeless because you've suffered a financial hardship, let's say, for example, something happened to your car and you had to repair it because you need your car to go to work, Well, in this particular case, that individual can come to the Wellness Center and get help with rental assistance, utility assistance, and financial counseling. So we're not leaving the community out of this equation. So now we're looking at the how and the where. Please note that city staff has extensively researched different construction methods, looking for the most cost-effective and time-saving way to construct this facility. And we've narrowed down alternative construction methods, which includes modular construction. If you're not familiar with modular constructions, basically the building is put together off-site and then it's assembled at its final location. And there's a variety of facades, outside facades that can be used. I'm just going to give you an example here. These 3 pictures are just illustrations, but they're all modular constructions. So they can be as fancy or as simple, but basically we have aesthetically pleasing options, very flexible. I want you to know that city staff has examined a building. We actually connected with the local modular company and we toured the plant. And we're looking at a building that would be able to encompass the Wellness and Recuperative Care Center. It's approximately 17,000 square feet, but basically I want you to understand this building was previously used by the state of California. This was formerly a detention facility out in San Isidro. The building is 3 years old, but it's only been occupied for 2 years. In such, it just leads to the flexibility of being either divided into 2, it can be reconfigured. It just leads to a lot of options that are not available in a typical brick and mortar style building. There are 2 potential sites that the city is examining. Both are owned by the city. The first site in option 1 is near Evadale Park. And the second option is in Old Town. As you can see from the second option, the space is divided, where it was like the Wellness or Recuperative Care Center would be across the street from each other, but that's fine. Both sites would work equally well. The reason why the city is looking at city-owned land is because of the grant process. The fact that the city would be able to have site control would give us an extra benefit with moving forward with the grant process. And in terms of the city's vision, we hope to move forward with the modular construction, and in that case, we would have ownership of the building. The plans would be state approved. These are some of the features that would be offered in a modular construction, and that's the multiple restrooms and showers for men and women, defined sleeping areas for individuals and families, the medical evaluation rooms, the private interview rooms, an industrial kitchen, dining hall, recreation, various office spaces for the on-site support agencies, and the room for storage and kennel areas. And in terms of next step, the city definitely intends to decide on a location, and for that we are seeking feedback from City Council. And once a location is decided, the city will pursue entitlements. We are continuously pursuing funding options. This building is state approved. And once in place, we will initiate a request for a proposal for lead operators to manage the Wellness and Recuperative Care Center. The building will be leased to operators, and the city will continue to form strategic partnerships. And that concludes this presentation.
I think now would be an opportunity for any questions or comments from the council. Maybe before doing that, I know we have a few members of the appointed Homelessness Solutions Task Force. I'd like to recognize them because the work that they're doing has been invaluable when it has come to getting us to where we're at in terms of not only the plan that this council approved, but helping offer advice and priority and getting us to this stage with you tonight. So maybe either stand or raise your hand just to be recognized for your effort. I do personally thank you.
Thank you for your excellent presentation. Have any questions?
I have just a few, if I might, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Are there any barriers to entry to the Wellness and Recuperative Center?
It's a low barrier. However, there will be a couple of barriers. For instance, because we're having children and families, we will not be able to allow sex offenders. We will not be able to allow people who have a history of violent crimes or open or active warrants. But for the most part, it will be low barrier, checking out a lot of boxes so people can enter.
Okay. And then to what degree, if any, are local nonprofits coordinating efforts for the center?
Okay, so right now there would be a combination of nonprofits and local governments. And in terms of the coordination, it will pretty much be through MOUs, memorandums of understanding. The agencies are willing to provide services free of cost to the city with the ability to occupy the space and meet the need.
And it looks like the intent here is really to provide a form, if not directly, of wraparound services. Do I understand that correctly? Okay.
Correct.
And then with regard to our ability to enforce our present laws, I know that there's a position that we have to make sure that we have available shelter. Does that available shelter have to be a strong demonstration that we're attempting to meet the need, or does it we have to meet every one-on-one need?
Let me clarify. The available shelters needs to meet the need of our unsheltered homeless population, not our entire homeless population.
Thank you. And I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, well, I just want to make a comment. It's a question to the manager. There's been a lot of discussion in regard to the city's joint agreement with the county to convert Queens Motel to a homeless. Is this in conjunction or separate? Would you explain that briefly, please?
This is totally separate. What we've presented to you tonight, and totally independent. The Queens Motel, which is being recoined Desert Haven, and I'm not sure the latest update. The last update I had was that it was expected to be complete in April. But that's geared more towards the segment of the homeless population that are considered chronically homeless.
You know, I have a lot of questions, but what I'm going to do, with the permission of my colleagues, I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to add this to a workshop agenda, and then I can ask all my questions. Hopefully, if I didn't, we'll have Dr. Rita available as well, because I know she's really concerned of what's going on. I mean, you're doing great. I'm just flabbergasted of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I know my question was answered because I was also under the assumption that it was actually connected to the Queens Motel, which is the Desert Haven project. Yeah. But I understand now that it's separate. Right. But let me find out, Rita, if she has anything.
Yes, I would like to say thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. But I would like to have a written presentation as well so that I can follow up. And I would appreciate if we could have a list of the meetings of the task force so that when we're available, we can also be in the attendance. Because the more that we can do and the more that we know, the more we can help. So I appreciate the work of everyone in the task force. But I personally would like to have a written presentation so that I can underline all the important items that I probably didn't get. I did write some, but I didn't get them all. And I would like very much to attend your meetings whenever possible. So thank you for all your wonderful work, and I appreciate your desire to help others.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you very much. I believe those were all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful presentation. At this time, I will ask our city clerk to please present the agenda and revisions to the agenda.
The city